is certain of what to do, what is the framework, and not doubt what to do. Although the term critical mineral has been used by various nations for considerable period, there's been no universal consensus of what it is. I normally describe critical minerals as every mineral being critical, because it depends on where you are and what you think is included in defining your critical mineral. That's why a definition of the US and the EU are not the same. And the definition of China is different, and the definition of other major countries are different, because they define critical minerals in terms of their needs and many issues which Dr. Mtuku is going to explain technically on what is taken into account in doing that. And because this is a complex issue, I've also brought in the DG to sit with me, and Dr. Masakwa on the other side is going to deal mainly with the legislation, which is the amendment of the MPRDA. The word critical minerals is used in many terms. Others use the term interchangeable as critical minerals, as strategic minerals, as future minerals, referring to the same issue of the critical minerals. And in doing so, the importance is focusing on economic growth, industrialization in some instances, technological advancement, energy transition, geopolitical consideration, supply chain vulnerability, environmental and social concerns, and strategic importance. That's why some of the countries put emphasis on the defense capabilities that are actually linked to these minerals. It is within this context that in 2023 we resolved at the African Critical Minerals Summit that Africa should develop a clear roadmap on how to maximize the exploitation and monetization of these resources for value addition to our economies. That means we are developing a unique definition for the African continent, which is not borrowed from any other major country. At the center of this roadmap is a shared vision for critical minerals with which our continent is endowed, and thereby foster regional cooperation and economic growth. Basically, what we want to avoid is the question of a historic dynamic in the continent that makes the continent rich but poor. Is the question of pit to port, where the continent mines these minerals, put them on the rail or truck to the port and export them in raw form. And that is translated in us exporting jobs and exporting capacity to develop our societies. So we are launching this this strategy to deal with those issues frontally as a continent. We are going to take this strategy to the continent, and then to realize this shared vision, the department assigned MINTEC, where Dr. Mtuku is the CEO, the responsibility to coordinate and the development of South African critical mineral strategy, with the intention to foster investment into exploration, beneficiation, building resilient local value chain, research and development, skills development, strengthening regional integration, and international partnerships to position the country as a major player in the global critical minerals market. So we're looking into all these issues. That's why we commissioned the study to a research institution, which is MINTEC. And in that research, they involved the sector. I'm hoping that the Mineral Council agrees that they were part of developing this strategy. So it's a sectoral strategy. We don't want to actually work in silos and do things that will have different interpretations in the sector. The drafting of the study commenced with adopting of a robust methodology to determine the aspect of critical minerals. This methodology was based on 8 indicators, including inter alia, export potential, employment indicators, supply risks, export sales, domestic sales, and sustainability indicators. This focus ensured that minerals with the highest potential to drive economic and industrial growth are prioritized, which then provide guidance in determining the criticality of specific mineral commodities. And then at least 21 commodity studies were undertaken in parallel with the work of determining the critical minerals. And these commodity studies sufficiently provided a clear picture of the state of the mining industry in South Africa. So we're not just looking at critical minerals, we also look into the state of the mining industry in the country. Because it's easy for people to say mining is going to be a sunset industry, mining is not growing, and this study of individual minerals made sure that when we develop the mineral strategy for the country and looking at the state of the minerals in South Africa, we look into individual critical minerals rather than just having a generalized view. Maybe let me just digress, Dr. Mtuku, and say, historically, South Africa has been a gold mining destination, and people actually equated mining to gold mining. The fact that we've been mining gold for 140 years plus is translating into a decline of gold mining. And many people, when they say decline of gold mining, see that as the decline of the mining industry. And it's not the same. Gold is in decline because every time of gold taken out of the ground doesn't grow again. Mining is not like Coke where you mix syrup and water and produce a drink. You mine it, one kilogram is out, that 1 kilogram doesn't return. So when you've been mining gold for 140 years, decline is natural, but you are growing in a number of other minerals. So Ndadem Tuku is going to elaborate on that. Whereas every mineral is found to be critical for various reasons, the study has identified the following minerals as high critical minerals for South Africa, based on their criticality informed by the site indicators. They are platinum, manganese, iron ore, coal, and chrome ore. Those are the top 5 minerals in terms of criticality. Let me repeat them because they're quite important. Platinum, group metals, PGMs, manganese, iron ore, coal, and chrome ore. The study has further identified mineral commodities such as gold, vanadium, palladium, rhodium, and rare earth elements as minerals with moderate to high criticality. So it's not limited to the 5, but they actually categorize these minerals in terms of their criticality. And minerals such as copper, cobalt, lithium, graphite, nickel, titanium, phosphate, fluorspar, zirconium, uranium, and aluminium were identified as minerals with moderate criticality. So they are all in the list of critical minerals and categorized in terms of their criticality. The list will constantly be reviewed and updated as critical classification mix is dependent on underlying market conditions, exploration, technology advancement, substitutionality, and recycling and geopolitics, among others. I'm sure you'll know that if you monitor geopolitics, you'll find out that some of them that is the center of negotiations is that we'll negotiate peace for you, but give us your minerals. It is not exceptional to a particular country. It is a strategy that faces all the countries that have deposits of critical minerals. So we should analyze that situation very carefully. Additionally, the site does not view critical minerals in isolation. Instead, they are treated as part of a larger ecosystem that drive essential technologies such as electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cells, wind turbines, battery storage systems, microelectronics, and advanced manufacturing. To this end, the strategy identifies the following 6 pillars with target intervention for critical minerals development and beneficiation close to the point of production. So our view is that critical minerals should be developed and be beneficiated close to the point of production. That means we must reverse the historical pit to port approach, where you mine and export raw commodities. So geoscience mapping and exploration, the study recognizes that mineral discovery is a function of exploration and that geology mapping plays a vital role in identifying resource potential and directing efficient exploration efforts. The strategy, therefore, emphasizes that South Africa must prioritize exploration to sustain its mining sector and for the success of this strategy. Every mine starts from exploration and then the value chain follows. So if we are weak with exploration, we are actually reducing the potential into the future of mining. That's where it all starts. Value addition and localization, cognizant of the fact that value addition and localization reduce reliance on foreign manufacturers, boost the gross domestic product, creates jobs, develop skills. The strategy advocates for strengthening of local beneficiation and manufacturing to enhance economic growth, expand the export basket, and create new opportunities. This issue is in the strategy. When it was developed, we didn't actually experience it. Now, with the flooding of the chrome market by countries that we look as friendly, and actually to the decline of the chrome price, we are realizing the fact that actually national interests have no friend or enemy. We have a responsibility to ensure that we do defend our national interests. And research and development, investment, and building a diverse skilled workforce, the South Africa prioritizes investment in strategic research and development to transform South Africa's mineral wealth into a global competitive high-tech products by leveraging on Africa's resource and youthful population. That is very important. You must remember, historically, South Africa has only 2 mining schools, Wits and Tekkies. And there is a serious efforts to open a mining school in the University of the Northwest, put that campus in Rustenburg at the heart of a mining area. Those efforts are actually aimed at this thing of building diverse skills workforce. UJ is also working hard to upgrade their diploma programs into university degrees program. We support that so that there must be availability of these skills throughout the country, and the number of schools that we are having will determine that. The strategy stresses investment in strategic infrastructure and energy security for sustainable mining and downstream value addition. Financial instruments to support beneficiation. The strategy stresses that the robust fiscal framework is essential to support the strategy. Hence, it calls for a stable and competitive environment while aligning with broader geopolitical and economic objectives. The point we're making there is that it is not dependent only on the private sector to develop beneficiation. The state must have an active interest and contribute resources in developing beneficiation. Harmonization of policy and regulatory instruments. The strategy recognizes the agency to implement policies that can provide an enabling environment for increased mining outputs and improve competitiveness. To ensure policy and regulatory certainty and enhance investor confidence, the department has reviewed the proposed amendments of the Mineral and Petroleum Resource Development Act, the MPRDA of 2002. Mindful of the fact that A stable legal framework is essential to attract and retain investment, foster inclusive economic growth, and sustainable resource development. The Mineral Resource Development Bill of 2025 seeks to align mining legislation with evolving policy and economic conditions and global shift, while ensuring that it reflects current industry needs and government priorities. So that is a second policy framework area that has been approved by Cabinet. So it's quite important for us to have that. For example, if you look into this legal framework, somebody in the portfolio committee said to me, there is no investment until we have to point to them that just monitor the consolidation of black capital in mining. It's growing at a fast rate. You need to analyze. And what we think we'll have to do into the future is to commission a research on black capital formations post-independence. Because in South Africa, contribution of the state to capital formations is always categorized as crime and corruption. But the reality of the matter is that any country that moves and gets liberated, the state has a responsibility to support and develop capital formations post-independence. And in South Africa, we have not done that very well. And we think that state must be an observer and allow that to be left to the private sector, but the state must contribute to capital formations. But when we do that study, you will understand the development of, for example, if you take coal mining in South Africa, it is owned and managed by black South Africans. And if you go to manganese, that contribution is growing. If you go to platinum, it is coming up. Gold is coming up slower. And we always explain to people that this is a function of a capital front loading that is necessary for particular categories of minerals. If that mineral is actually open cast, there is less demand for capital formations that must be front loaded. But if you go deeper, gold, the deepest gold mine is 4 kilometers deep. Now, if you are an emerging company, you are not going to be able to cope with 4 kilometers deep in the mine because of its depth, because of the heat, because of the complicated mining experience that is necessary. And the bill proposes streamlining administrative processes to ensure proper alignment of National Environmental Management Act and the National Water Act, and thereby reduce bureaucratic influences and improve turnaround times for mining rights, permits, and regulatory approval. The bill further introduces a licensing regime for artisanal and small-scale mining operations, and in so doing formalize artisanal and small-scale mining operations, ensure compliance with environmental safety and labor regulation, as well as reduce the risk of illegal mining activities. And that issue is very important to us because in South Africa we tend to polarize policy issues. And the key is actually integration of economics and ecology. It's not economics versus ecology or ecology versus economics. Those two must actually be together, and that is what is called responsible development. And we need to follow that through. And having incorporated many of the issues raised with the department over a number of years, the department will gazette the bill for public comments today. And we therefore urge the citizen as well as interested and affected parties to enhance the bill by submitting their inputs on the bill to the department. And that is the end of the statement. Thank you very much for taking time to listen. Let me give Dr. Mtuku to actually simplify some of these issues from a technical aspect of them. Quite a complex issue to talk about both these issues. Okay.
Thanks, Minister. Good afternoon. I had prepared a... Good afternoon, thank you, sir. We have a presentation which we've been sharing to socialize the strategy. I'm not going to go through the presentation. The Minister covered most of the issues. However, I'd like to just flag a few slides so that it will give you an opportunity also to appreciate the context and also the technical aspects that are associated with what was presented by the Minister. I can move it here, but it doesn't move from my screen. Yeah, from my screen, so I can't see.
Oh, yeah, move up.
Yeah, move up. But,
Okay.
What do you want to
okay. That's fine. If this presentation is shared, the earlier slide is just the background and basically saying when it comes to the definition of criticality, is country specific, is region specific, is context specific. And in most cases, it's inwardly looking. It's very selfish. Depends on the needs of a country. Some countries looking at securing long-term supply of minerals. Some are looking at industrial development, technological advancement, and so forth. So it was important for us to also study what other countries have done before we embark on developing South Africa as a critical mineral strategy. So that was a journey, a study on its own. And on the basis of that, propose a methodology. Now it's not moving. Yeah.
Which slide do you want to?
This one.
This one.
Yeah, this one. It's okay, I'll keep on talking. So the first thing that we did was to develop a model, which was a scientific approach, basically looking at the 8 indicators that the Minister mentioned earlier on, looking at supply risk as an indicator, export potential, export sales, local sales, employment, substitutability. I'm glad the CEO of Minerals Council is here. More than 25% and recyclability of platinum supplies from recycling. So we need to watch the space very carefully, and it's growing recycling of critical minerals. But also to be forward-looking. Criticality is not about what you have. It's what you have, what you also need and you do not have. So we look at the minerals that the country will need, but we do not have, like lithium and graphite, even though we do have resources. And this is where exploration comes in. So I'll talk more when it comes to then why even the ranking is so important. Now, Minister indicated that we then rank each indicator. There was a mathematical formula that took everything into consideration and gave us a score. So we aggregated the scores, tried to weigh them so that we can understand the contribution of each commodity. Now, in the context of South Africa, we then propose a working definition of what is critical. You will see in most documents, people are talking about critical minerals, but also metals. So in the document, you will see a reference to critical minerals and metals. So in the context of South Africa, critical minerals and metals are minerals that are essential for overall economic development. Job creation, we could argue that job creation is embedded on economic development, but it has to be explicitly mentioned. industrial development, and contribution to national security. So very loaded, that's important. Now, let me go back to minerals with high criticality, which is platinum, manganese, iron ore, coal, and chrome. South Africa possesses ore reserve to a value of more than $2.5 trillion. Okay? With 16 commodities ranked in the top 10 internationally or globally. In 2023 figures, PGMs, gold, iron ore, and coal together accounted for 81% of total sales, 84% of export sales, 87% of employment, with the PGMs being the leading sector in terms of employment at 40%. Now you start to recognize why the criticality of those four is high, because of the contribution to the economy. If you add chrome, manganese together, accounted for 14% of total sales, 13.6% of export sales, and 7.3% of employment. If you look at coal, accounting for more than 70% of the country's energy needs. Now, when we talk about minerals with moderate to high criticality, all minerals are critical. But now with exploration, the ranking might change when you have more resources. Gold, vanadium, palladium, rhodium, rare earth elements. Now, the minerals with moderate criticality, because it's a mathematical formula, they did not fare well because some of them are at infancy. If you look at the lithium, we're coming. Graphite, you look at cobalt produced as a byproduct, titanium. They have vast resources. This is why now we need to invest on local manufacturing, the Bushveld complex, hosting vast resources of titanium. If you look at the phosphate, phosphor, zirconium, South Africa ranks high. So there is potential for these minerals also with time to move to moderate to high criticality. Also with exploration, and hence the strategy is emphasizing investing more on exploration. South Africa, our target is to attract 5% of global exploration budget. We're sitting as less than 1%, about 0.82%. That figure has been declining for the past 20 years, and it is important for us to improve on that. Now, quickly, the minister spoke about the pillars: geological mapping and exploration to engage investment, but also to make sure that we provide the quality data. It's a link to investment. So the strategy prioritizes that. Value addition and localization, and the important point here, point of departure, is value addition, beneficiation at source. Infrastructure development, energy security. Bulk commodities have been impacted by logistics, rail, ports, as well as energy. And I'll talk about one commodity that has been impacted a lot by electricity. Regulatory policy framework, Minister spoke about that. Financial instruments, they're important. To augment this study, then we look at case studies from other countries, what they've done in terms of fiscal instruments, or to promote local development of their minerals. So we look at India, Canada, even Botswana, Australia. A lot of countries were studied. R&D is very important when you talk about manufacturing, access to technology, but also investing in innovation and skills development. What is important also to look at enablers, and I'll talk about them shortly. There's a point that the minister highlighted on also promoting regional integration. If you look at Southern Africa, for instance, more than 30% of critical minerals are here. If you look at copper, it's Zambia, the DRC, cobalt, PGMs in South Africa, chrome in South Africa, vanadium, PGMs, South Africa. So if you look at lithium, which we don't have in abundance, and graphite, we do have the regionally. Mozambique titanium graphite, Madagascar cobalt nickel graphite. I'm just listing those that we have. Zimbabwe nickel lithium. So it's important for us also to look at our neighbors to make sure that what we don't have also. South Africa has built a capacity in terms of refining, and this is what the strategy proposes to position South Africa as a regional hub for refining and smelting, something that we've been doing for over the years. We also augmented this by looking at, we are fully aware that the critical minerals, and sometimes they become synonymous with the energy transition, but it's because of the key demands are driven by energy storage, energy generation, e-mobility, as well as aerospace or defense. Now we worked and look at battery minerals, battery materials, and here we're talking about aluminium, nickel, manganese, cobalt, phosphate, graphite, copper, vanadium. And so what is the potential for South Africa when it comes to battery materials or energy storage? It's very, very huge. In a nutshell, the study indicated that South Africa could easily attract investment and localization on the battery value chains. If you recall that the earlier work on lithium-ion batteries, actually it was South African innovation at the CSR. So building on what has been happening in the country, South Africa is well positioned to play in the lithium-ion battery space. Equally, South Africa is a prominent player when it comes to vanadium redox flow batteries. The study indicated that it's an opportunity space for South Africa to play in the energy storage space. Equally, energy generation, and as well as expanding into e-mobility. So these are some of the lessons that came out of some of the studies. These reports are available. The value chain is a thick report, 300 pages analysis. Material flow analysis is a report on its own. That are available. The model development is a report on its own. If I give you the study on energy storage was done around 2002, 2003, the report. At that point, there was a need and opportunity for South Africa to produce 80,000 tons of nickel sulfate to a value of 5.8 billion. That's a huge opportunity for the country. I'm just listing some of this opportunity. Production of 6 million liters of vanadium electrolyte, 5,000 tons of aluminum foil, which of course we are producing aluminum. And we do have a company, Hulamin, that is producing aluminum foil. So South Africa has pockets of excellence to play. We are already playing in the critical mineral space. I need to emphasize that point. We can do more. 100 tons of manganese sulfate, and we have companies who have started to play in this space. 20 tons of spherical graphite. So there are opportunities. Overall, the various manufacturing opportunities at that time were sitting at close to 10 billion rand at that point. These were 2021 prices. I'm almost at the end, but also establishment of lithium-ion battery assembly in South Africa, as well as vanadium redox battery. I'm not going to go into the case studies that are here to share. But what is important, the strategy without an implementation matrix, as well as the budget. We need to implement it, needs to be funded. All the case studies are indicated. If you look at the case of Australia, when they launched the strategy, there was over 7 billion investment fund to support the critical minerals. So that's why in the strategy also the fiscal instruments that have been spoken to is to make sure that we are able to support the strategy. But also, if you look at what we've been referring to, we have DTIC that's supposed to play a role, Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, National Treasury, and other departments, electricity and energy. What the strategy is calling for is the whole of government approach. If you talk of infrastructure that has been impacting, especially bulk commodities, the reliable supply of electricity calls for the whole of government approach. Now, in addition to the pillars that have been identified, the strategy also identified sectors it is difficult sometimes to focus on each commodity. But if you now start to look at the sectors, the strategy prioritizes energy storage. If you look at energy storage, how many of these minerals go into the nickel, manganese, vanadium, cobalt, lithium, copper, aluminum, graphite, and phosphate. Energy storage, equally platinum, copper, rare earth elements, silicon, uranium, aluminum. Also ferrochrome and ferroalloys. Here is an important point, because if you look at 2001, South Africa was top producer of ferrochrome. China was only producing about 5%. As we speak now, China produces more than 50% of chrome. On the backdrop of South African ore, South Africa will have been declining, sitting at around 30%. So there is another initiative specifically focusing on reviving the ferroalloy and ferrochrome industry. And the strategy also does make a mention of focusing on ferrochrome. Automotive sector, because e-mobility is a key driver of critical minerals. Steel industry, if you look at steel, what goes into there is iron, chromium, manganese, nickel, vanadium, silicon. So there are interrelationship and interdependency, as well as defense and aerospace, because the greater demand also for these critical minerals is in the defense space. Titanium, platinum, manganese, rare earth elements, lithium, cobalt, aluminum, and nickel. When it comes to metals, at the end, it's very rare that you can use a pure metal. In most cases, metals are used as alloys. You're going to use 1 or 3 or 4. So that's why the strategy then propose a sector approach as opposed to commodity. However, different commodities, they have challenges that are sometimes specific, and I've given an example of the ferrochrome and ferroalloy industry. Minister, I tried to cover everything by being all over the place, but there is a message in that madness. Thank you.